Good morning, everyone. So before we get started with our class today, so I just wanted to know, I haven't received any group formation information or the choice of projects till now in the WhatsApp group. So by end of today, I expect that all the groups should inform me about their group members and what is the project that you have chosen. Okay.
Today we
So
will see.
yeah. So basically, whoever is starting off can start with saying, okay, team one, and then put the names. The next person will go with the next number and so on, and that will be your team number. Okay. So please do it by end of today. We have to finalize that soon. And we will also probably have a quick session on how you are going to do your, to discuss about how you are approaching your project. So please take it seriously, and the evaluation will be fairly strict. You need to have a working circuit at the end of the day. Okay. So please get it done by today. All right. So let's get started with today's class. Right. So today we have reached the next or the penultimate topic in this course. I understand that there are about maybe 5 more lectures apart from today. Next week we have 3 lectures, and the following week I think Tuesday and Wednesday. So we have totally 5 lectures left. So we will try to cover as much as possible, and maybe 4 lectures on PLLs and maybe 2 lectures on the transceiver design. So architecture. So that's what I'm planning to do. Hopefully we'll be able to get through without extra classes, but in case I need it, I will let you know. Okay. Now, so far we have looked at the entire transceiver. We looked at the LNA, the mixers, the power amplifier, and then we finally came to the oscillator or the frequency synthesizer. And then we said the core component for this frequency synthesizer is basically your VCO, your voltage controlled oscillator. And so we went through the different parameters for your VCOs and how they are designed, what are the design parameters, how to design a VCO. All these things we have covered so far. Right? Now, if we were completely living in an ideal world, a VCO should have done the job, right? We will not have any more problems. We would be in a very good place where we don't have to worry about the other effects, right? So basically, you can say, okay, this is my control bits and this is my control voltage, and my VCO is going to be exactly at this particular frequency. Okay. So for example, let's say I need my oscillator, my FLO, let's say to be at 1.254 gigahertz. Okay. And I need it to be precisely there. Okay. And let's say I come up with a certain bit setting, B3, B2, B1, B0. You remember in our last class, in yesterday's class, we talked about how we have a coarse tuning and a fine tuning. And then let's say we also have a control voltage setting. Now, if this were to give the same result, then there would be no problem at all. Okay. But in practice, what happens is if you set a certain bit setting, and let's say if you are giving a certain control voltage, okay, you might expect the oscillation frequency to, let's say, 1.254 gigahertz. But in practice, the VCO will drift based on so many different factors. Okay, first of all, there is process variation. What is process variation? I think we have covered it earlier. So that is, if you say a transistor is supposed to behave like this, it does not behave exactly like this. Okay. For example, if you say the threshold voltage of my transistor has to be 380 millivolt, you will see that the threshold voltage will have a kind of a Gaussian spread. Okay. So that is, let's say if you take 1000 transistors on the same die or across multiple dies, and you somehow compute the threshold voltage for each of the transistors, you will see that it will have a nice spread. Okay. So there will be transistors which are having something like 400, 420, 450 millivolt, and things which are having 320, 380 millivolt, you know, 320, 340, 350 millivolt. So there will be a big spread. Okay. So same way, if you put a structure and say, okay, this is my inductor, right? The actual value of your inductor will change. Okay. If you take the same inductor thing and then you put it in like, two, three different things, the exact precise value will change a little bit. Same way, capacitors will also have a spread, right? So your cap value, let's say this is the nominal capacitance that you chose or you designed. You if you collect, let's say, 1000 ICs and then you measure the capacitance, it will have another spread. Okay, so basically what will happen, 1000 different ICs will have 1000 different oscillation frequencies for the same control voltage and same bit setting. All right, now on top of that, there will also be temperature variation. Okay, oscillators are heavily a function of the temperature also. There will be some drift in the capacitance also, some temperature coefficient will be there, and some of the capacitances in your oscillator will also start changing, have some temperature coefficient, right? The loss and other things will be different, so some temperature drift will be there. Now on top of this, you will also have supply sensitivity. Now what happens is your VCO is extremely sensitive to your TC supply. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, you remember, like, there will be an IR drop on your supply lines. There will also be an L by dt drop on your supply lines, right? Now let's say there are other blocks which are connected to the same uh, line. Okay. For example, let's say this is your chip boundary. Let's say this is your VDD pin. Let's say there is one block here, let's say there is one VCO here, and let's say some other block here. So all of them are drawing currents, right? So the voltage V1, V2 and V3 will be basically like this, right? Because first of all, due to the IR drop, and in addition to it, even the LDI by dt drop will happen, right? So a constant IR drop will give you a shift in your VDD. So the VDD coming to your VCO will change, right? And because of that, what will happen? If you recall the structure that we talked about in yesterday's class, the transistors have their parasitic capacitance also, and those are voltage dependent capacitances. Now in addition, if you put varactors or MOS capacitors and so on, the VCO becomes even more sensitive to supply. Okay, so as the VDD changes, you're going to have slightly different frequencies of oscillation because these capacitances are going to slightly move around. Okay, which is why this is a very bad idea. And usually, okay, if you talk about VCOs, usually VCOs are powered using a dedicated LDO. Okay, so that the other so this is, if you have a IR drop itself, it will change. Now if you have time varying current and I is going to be time varying, and on top of that, if you also throw in LDI by dt, what will happen, your frequency will keep shifting around with time. Okay, which is what is called as supply noise. So supply noise will directly affect your phase noise. Okay, supply noise will basically what it will just make your VCO2 move around like anything, right? So across time, if you see, I mean, the spectrum will basically be a nice cut. Yeah, because the VCO is basically moving around. Okay, so the supply noise will affect your phase noise very heavily. Okay, in fact, to the extent that even if you use a switch mode power supply and other things, even the switching spurs will cause will kind of affect your phase noise, and to the extent that sometimes people use normal batteries to test VCOs sometimes to get the extract I mean to get the exact phase noise. Okay, so supply, the VCO is extremely sensitive to supply. So because of all these effects, what will happen? Let us say your phone base station, your base station told you to go to this particular channel, which is basically this exact frequency. What will happen? You will be moving from one person's channel to another person's channel. You'll be just literally moving around. You'll be listening to 10 different people's conversation as you are trying to talk, right? So this VCO by itself cannot do the job of being a very precise frequency synthesizer. All right. So because of that, there is a need to stabilize your the VCO, or let's say you need to have a very precise frequency generation. Okay. Now, how can we do that? So all of us, I mean, I think all of you would have taken some course in control systems, right? If there is some quantity or some element which is behaving very erratically, what you need is a negative feedback loop to control it. Okay. So what we are going to do is to build a negative feedback loop around our VCO. Okay. So we are going to put a loop around our VCO so that we are going to provide real-time correction, so that despite all these effects of, let's say, process variation, temperature effects, supply drifts, all these kinds of things, right? Despite all these effects, you will be able to very precisely generate your frequency. Okay. Now that we have decided that we are going to put a negative feedback loop, now how to design that loop? What kind of a loop should it be? Okay, so obviously we are going to start with our VCO, right? And what is the input to our VCO? We have our control voltage. So let us assume what we are doing here is, let's say you take it to the right band. For example, this bit settings B3 to B0, or it can even be larger. That band setting is going to take you in the vicinity of, let's say in this case, 1.254 gigahertz. Okay, it is going to go into that vicinity. Now what we need is that very fine control. Okay, so that is why we talk about only the control voltage coming in, and you have a output phase. Now what do we need to do? We of course need to have a feedback system, right? Now when you have a feedback system, how is a typical negative feedback system working? Right, let me draw the typical negative feedback system that you would have studied maybe in your circuits course or even in your control systems course. Right, you have some, let's say H of S, or let's call it as some G of let's call it as some A of S, right? And then you'll have some beta of S, right? And this is going to be your out, this is going to be your reference, right? This is a very typical negative feedback system, and the closed loop response is given by what? A of S beta of S divided by 1 plus A of S beta of S, right? This is your closed loop negative feedback system, right? So your negative feedback system needs a reference. Without a reference, you cannot build a negative feedback system, correct? So where is our reference going to come? Okay, now if you say, okay, I'm going to have a reference, 1.254 gigahertz, then the question is, why do you even need a VCO and PLL? If you already have a good reference, just use it directly, right? If you can have such a good reference, you really don't need all this VCO and PLL to run. You just directly use it. Okay. The reason we are going through all this procedure is because you don't have that good reference, right? So what shall we do? Okay, we need to have a reference, but the reference is not at the frequency at which we desire it to be, desire to have. Because if we had that reference in the first place, we would have directly used that for our LO, right? So it turns out that we have excellent references at very low frequencies. Okay, so for example, you have crystal oscillators, right, which are extremely, of course, high Q oscillators, and they are very, very precise. Their temperature stability is good, and their, phase noise is extremely good, and they're very, very stable across. I mean, if it's 10.7 megahertz crystal, it will be a 10.7 megahertz very, very precisely, right? So which is why we are going to use that reference. So this reference, let's say in this case, for example, I'm going to take it 10.7 megahertz. All right. Now what is the problem? Let's say you are going to put a divider. You need to have a difference circuit, right? You need something to compare. Okay, so first and foremost, for you to do this, both have to be at the same frequency, right? Otherwise, I mean, this whole works on the basis of phase. Okay, you remember in yesterday's class, I told you that it is more easier to talk about phase than frequency. So let us say that there is a phi out here. Okay, the phase of the signal, output phase, right? Let's say this has a phi in, all right, but both need to be comparable, all right? Now, and therefore, before we even do that, let us say this summation block, this subtraction block, can be implemented by what is called as a phase detector, all right? This is what is called a phase detector, all right? So this is going to be plus minus. It's going to give you the phase detection, all right? Now, for this to happen, both have to be at the same frequency. Now, how can we do that? That can be achieved by having a frequency divider. So, many of these blocks, obviously, you might not have studied or you may not have come across, but in this course, we are going to take a quick look at all these different blocks. Okay, you will be surprised at how simple these blocks actually are. You know, but let us just say that you have a certain phase and you have a frequency divider. So, for example, this 1.254 gigahertz which you need, you select the division ratio to be such that you get 10.7 megahertz here. So, this frequency divider has reduced the frequency. At the same time, if this output of the VCO is going to drift, the output of this frequency divider is also going to correspondingly drift. Okay, that divided by n will be the drift of your frequency divider. Right. Now, this phase detector goes through what is called as a loop filter, and that drives your control voltage. Okay, so this completes our loop, and this is what is called as a phase locked loop. So the motivation for doing a PLL is that your VCO is not very stable, and then we need to kind of make it really, precise and stable, and that we are doing by means of a negative feedback loop. And we know that the reference is existing only at a very low frequency, so we use a divider to bring down the frequency so that it is equal to your reference frequency or nominally equal to your reference frequency, and then you use a frequency phase detector to give the difference between the phase, and that is processed by a loop filter which controls your VCO. Okay, this is a phase lock loop. Any doubts, any questions? This is a very simple, but this is basically the fundamental architecture of any PLL. Okay, any doubts, any questions? Okay, all right. So now let us start looking at each of these elements, and let us see how these things all come together. Okay, all right. Now, uh, 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 just a quick note: if some of you have worked with microcontrollers, maybe for some robotics project or something like that, you would recall that you will have a small crystal oscillator that has to be attached, or a crystal that has to be attached to your maybe your Atmega or PIC or 8051 microcontroller, right? Why is that crystal required? Basically, it is that crystal is, I mean, that crystal might have been a lower frequency crystal, but that crystal is basically there to provide you with this reference. Okay, and that reference is used for your PLL, because every microcontroller, every microprocessor, every digital circuit which has a clock will have a PLL inside. Okay, and that PLL is only going to generate your clock. So these PLLs are not restricted to only RF circuits. I mean RFICs, wireless communication circuits. Every microprocessor, every microcontroller has a PLL or multiple PLLs. which is going to generate the uh, clock that is required for your digital circuits or your analog circuits or RF circuits. Okay. All right. So now the type of VCO might change. Okay. It may not be an LC VCO. It might be a voltage controlled ring oscillator. It can be anything else. Okay. But still, nevertheless, the PLL is basically used. Okay. Or yeah.
Sir, what is the input from the crystal oscillator? Like what will it be? It will
Yeah,
be
it's a
voltage
voltage.
or
Okay. So it will be a voltage. So for example, if it's a crystal oscillator, I mean, you have these crystal oscillator ICs also, which are available, which take the crystal and I mean, you guys would have studied the crystal oscillator also in your analog circuits, right? So you basically have an oscillator which depends on crystal, right? And then it will basically give you a sine wave, which you can put through a bunch of nice inverters, and it will give you very nice square waves. Okay. So basically, all this stuff is internal to your microcontroller or your chip. Okay, it will only interface to the crystal of chip, right? So it is a square wave only. Okay, it is a voltage waveform. If it is a, let's say this whole thing has working at 3.3 volt, then this will be 0 to 3.3 volt supply. Or if it is 1.2 volt, it will be 0 to 1.2 volt square wave signals, which are extremely precise in their time. Their jitter is very low. Their phase noise is very low. Okay, all right. Now all yeah
okay, sir. So for
yeah
this PD block, uh,
yeah
how
that's
is
what
it
I'm coming
designed?
to now. Okay, all right.
Okay, sir.
So you'll be surprised by how simple basically this is. All right. So yeah, you might get initially confused because I say it's an oscillator, it's a signal, it's a square waveform, and other things, and then I write something like phi in phi out. Okay. So I'll explain. Just bear with me. Like I think by the time we kind of conclude today's class, you'll have a very good idea. Okay. So let us say, let's look at the phase detector. Okay. Now, what is the job of the phase detector? Okay. Basically, let's say it has two inputs, x1 and let's call it x1 of t and x2 of t. Okay. Let's say the x1 of t is going to be like this. All right. And let's say x2 of t is at the same frequency. All right. But it is not aligned to its phase. Okay. That is to say, your x2 of t is going to be like this. All right. Basically, what is the difference between these two signals? It has a there is a phase difference of delta phi. Okay. Now, how do we measure this phase difference? You might say, okay, you are drawing a time domain waveform and saying there's a phase difference of delta phi. How is that done? Let's say this is delta t, right? So delta t by capital T, where capital T is the time period of this square wave, right, into 360 is going to give you the phase in terms of degrees, or 2 pi will give you the phase in radians. So usually we stick to radians, right, or go back and forth, but this is basically what it is. Okay. So delta t, which is the offset between the two rising edges, and the assumption here is x1 of t and x2 of t are exactly at the same frequency. Okay. So in this example that I have given, okay. Now what will happen is that the phase difference or the time delay between these two square waves can be thought of as a phase difference between these two signals, okay, which are related by this equation. I hope it is clear. Okay, all right. Now you might also ask the question. Okay, go to that next. So let us say you have this x1 of t and x2 of t, both are going into this phase detector. Okay. Now what is the output? Let's say this is some x out of t. All right. This is what you are going to get. Okay. Now what is it that you want this phase detector to do? Going by the name phase detector, what is it supposed to do? You say, okay, my x-axis is this delta phi, and my y-axis is supposed to be one. Let's say my y-axis is x out bar, which is, let's say, the averaged value or the DC value of your x out. Okay, so the averaged or the DC value of x out has to be a straight line which passes, through the origin, such that for del phi equal to 0, it gives me a 0 x out, and for del phi increasing, basically it is a detector, right? And let us say it has a transfer function which is given by kpd, which is the slope. In other words, what you can say is x out bar can be written as kpd times delta phi. All right. So x out is a voltage, x out bar is a DC voltage, DC average voltage, which is proportional to the phase difference between two square waves. I hope you get it, right? You have phase difference between two square waves. Both the square waves are rail to rail signals, which is they go from 0 to VDD, right? And they only have some timing difference between them, or in another lingo, it is phase difference between them. And this phase detector is going to convert that phase difference or that time difference between the two into a DC voltage, okay, or into a voltage which is going to be proportional to the delta phi. Okay, so this is how we want our phase detector to work. Okay, now how can we do this? I mean, you might think, uh, okay, this seems like a very, complicated thing. Okay, how can we, do this? I'll give you a very simple circuit. Let me just clear the space here. So del phi can be written as del t by capital T into 2 pi. Okay, now my phase detector is going to be very simple. This is a very simple phase detector. There are others also. So what is this? Yeah, it's an XOR gate
So
followed by one RC filter. Okay, so let us see what is going to happen. Okay, so let's say x1 x out of t, which is nothing but x1 of t XORed with x2 of t. What will you get? You'll basically get a pulse here and maybe a pulse here, right? And you'll have another pulse, another pulse, another pulse, and so on, right? Right, now the width of this pulse is going to be what? The width of the pulse is going to be equal to the delta t, correct? So as your delta t increases, the pulse width is going to increase. In other words, you can basically say that, let me call this as x out of t, and let me call this as x out bar. Okay, x out of t can be thought of as a square wave whose duty cycle is a function is proportional to del phi. Yes, larger your del phi or larger your delta t, your duty cycle becomes longer. Duty cycle increases. But if del phi is 0, basically your XOR output is going to be 0. Right? And now, what is this RC doing? Your RC is just a low pass filter which is taking the DC average of your square wave with varying duty cycle. Right? Now, if you derive the Fourier expansion, I mean, it's a square wave where the duty cycle is, change with an arbitrary duty cycle. If you derive the Fourier series expansion, you will see that the DC component, the A naught component, will basically be proportional to this delta phi, or rather, this will be directly proportional to the DC duty cycle. Okay, so this delta t. So what we will get is x out bar. As your duty cycle increases, what are you going to get? You're basically going to get a linearly increasing DC voltage. Okay. So this is a very simple uh, uh, phase detector. Okay. Now you can also let us just plot this. Okay. As del phi increases, and let's say the x-axis x out bar, right? From 0, you'll have 0 DC voltage, right? When it reaches 180 degrees, what will happen? If the del phi is 180 degrees, you're basically x1 and x2 of t are complements of each other, right? Which means that your x out of t will be fully VDD, correct? If you have, let's say, an input like this, your XOR output will be stuck at VDD basically. Right? So therefore, your X out bar goes up like this till it reaches VDD here. Okay. Now after this, what will happen? After this, now again, so basically now when it is 180 degrees, you don't have any duty cycle at all. It's just a constant signal there. Then once it goes beyond that, what will happen? Basically, you will start having, it will start falling down, right? And it will come down, and then again it will, this will be 360 degrees, right? And then if it goes beyond that, you will have, let's say this is 540 degrees and so on. All right. So this is the response of your XOR as a phase detector. All right. So you can see that the phase detector is basically going to be, I mean, repeating with 360 degrees. All right. Now let us also look at the other question. What if x1 of t and x2 of t are not of the same frequency? Till now what we saw is x1 and x2 are same frequency, only there is a phase difference. Okay. So let me give you an example of x1 and x2 being of different frequencies and different phases. Okay. Okay. Let us say this is x1 of t, and let's say x2 of t is going to be like, all right. Now what will you get if you do an XOR? Basically, if you do an XOR, you will basically get X out of t looking like this. Let's say, no, you'll have here 1, and then maybe here, and then again here you might have something right here, and so on, right? So basically, this will be the beat frequency between these two x1 and x2. So both of them will be, although I've kind of given a very a crude example. Usually in a PLL, what will happen is, let's say if it is 10.7 megahertz crystal, it might be 10.5 or 10.4 or 10.9. Okay, so it's going to be in the vicinity of that reference signal, but little different. Okay, so basically again you put a low pass filter, it's again going to give you the same information. Okay, so the phase detector need not have the same frequency, it can have different frequency. I mean, the inputs to the phase detector can be of different frequencies also. Okay, but basically it will just compute what is the phase difference at every instant of time, and it will give you. Okay. All right. Now, how do we use this? Okay, so let us try to form a simple PLL. Okay, so let us say we take this phase detector. This is going to be the reference, and this is going to go through the a low pass filter, which is also called as the loop filter. Okay, in this case, what did I do? I just put one simple RC. Okay, the loop filter can be different. I mean, there are different ways to, this is a very simple loop filter. Okay, let's say we just say there's some kind of a low pass filter, and then it goes to your VCO, and then that is fed back. Okay, let us say that we have an appropriate division ratio and bring it back. Okay, now what will happen? Your signals here, of course, this will be a nice neat reference signal. Here it can be slightly off, kind of thing. Phase can be off. Now here what will you get? You will have some pulse type signals, right? After the low pass filter, what will you have? You are expected to have a very straight line, but we all know that simple low pass filters will not get rid of your harmonics very easily, right? Like how when you do an AC to DC conversion, you still have some ripples. Same way, the signal at this point will have some ripples. Alright. The low pass filter is not an ideal low pass filter, and therefore it is going to have some ripples in the output of the low pass filter, and that is what is going to get fed as an input to VCO. Okay. Now your VCO of course acts according to this control voltage and gives back the signal, and this is a simple PLL which we have done, and this is what is called as a type 1 PLL. Okay. Now we have a very, if you see this, do you think there is some kind of an issue? Okay, before that, let me kind of, explain how this is going to work. All right. So, before that, do you see any issue with this particular diagram that I have drawn, or the waveforms that I have drawn? Okay, we will come back. You will come back to that. Okay, hopefully, I don't know, in today's class, if possible, or in the next class. All right. Now, how is this basically going to work? Right. The problem is now your input frequency and your VCO divided frequency are different, slightly different, right? We said that this is only a phase detector, but how will it bring your system to work? That is a question, right? Now, how will this work? So let us see what happens is, first of all, this phase detector, let's say, let's take a simple example. Maybe I'll just go to the next page. Let's say this is your V in or your Vref. Okay. Okay. Now your output is going to be slightly, let us say, slower. All right. Let's say this is your V out. Okay. Let me just draw maybe one cycle. All right. Now what will happen to the phase lock loop? Now let us say at this point you are basically going to enable the PLL, right? Now the phase detector now starts seeing some gaps, right? Now because of this, right, so here you will see that the thing becomes wider and wider because these two frequencies are not the same, right? So as you wait for some more time cycles, what will happen is the when there is, let's say, a mismatch between the two frequencies, let's say this is omega 1 and this is omega 1 plus some delta omega, which is omega 2, right? So what will happen is the phase error will start accumulating, right? Because one is going slightly slower, right? And the phase error keeps accumulating as you go for. No, of course, my diagram seems to be a little bad, but you kind of get the idea, right? The phase error starts increasing, and therefore your control voltage now, when it, let's say, nominally it was here, it now starts increasing. Okay, it now starts slowly increasing, right? Now because your control voltage is increasing, what happens to your omega out? your omega out will also directly increase in proportion to your frequency, right? Now as this increases, what will happen to your V out, right? Uh, okay, I think I have to redraw this diagram because in order to explain this, I need more number of cycles, right? So let us say that it is, okay. Now this is my output. As I mentioned, let's say it is slightly slower, right? And therefore my phase detector will have a small pulse here and a very small impulse here, right? And then some slowly increasing width and so on. Now my control voltage, what is going to happen? My control voltage is going to slowly start rising. My omega out will also start rising, right? Because now my omega out is increasing, what will happen to this wave V out? It will start speeding up a little bit, right? Right. Now once it starts speeding up, this error will start decreasing. Okay. So maybe the speeding up I have to draw better. Okay. So now what will happen is my error starts decreasing, and therefore this loop is, what can happen is kind of overcompensates it initially, right? What it will do is it will kind of speed it up so fast, and then it will try to bring it down. Okay. So now what will happen is my omega out will basically come to the right thing. All right. So let's say this is omega 1. So usually when this happens is, right, let's say you are talking over the phone, right? Let's say you're already in one base station. Let's say you're moving around. Let's say you're traveling and then you're moving to the next thing, right? You're going to the next base station. Now what will happen? You will be assigned a different channel, right? Now when you are given a different channel, let's say this is the point at which you're switching. Now what will happen? It will move from one thing to another. So let's say this is omega 1, reference remains the same, right? And now this moves to omega 1 plus delta omega, which is omega 2. So which is why let us say it is moved slower. Now what will happen is, whatever be the case, it will basically come and take you to the omega that you are supposed to be. All right. So this is how your simple PLL basically works. So initially, when let's say things are slowed up or things are fastened, they what will happen is, first it will speed it up or reduce the speed, whichever way it needs to go, right? And then compensate for the phase and then take it to a stable region. Okay. So this is how your simple type 1 PLL works. Okay. You can see that the control voltage will look something like this. Okay. Okay. So now let us just put some math into this. All right. Now, how can we have already looked at the transfer function of the phase detector, right? We said that the phase detector's transfer function is given as what? It is KPD, right? So, phi, I mean, the input is phase and the output is voltage, and this transfer function is given by KPD. And what will be the units for this one? This will basically be volts per radian, right? Okay. Your low pass filter, of course, will have some transfer function. Let's say this is H of S. If it is a simple RC low pass filter, what will it be? It will be 1 by SC divided by R plus SC, 1 by SC, right? The same low pass filter that I used here, right? If you take a very simple loop filter, this can be written as what? 1 plus 1 by SRC. Right? This is your loop filter. And what is the VCO's transfer function? We said it is phi out by V control. Right? What did we say it was? It was 2 pi k V by S. This we derived in the previous class. So the VCO has an output phase, and here you have a phase input, right? The whole loop is easier to calculate if you take the whole thing as phase. So here what happens is a phase difference is converted to a voltage, and this is a voltage transfer function. Here there is a voltage to phase conversion. Okay, of course the divide by n, I mean, for many mathematical analysis you can just get rid of it, or kind of assume that it is going to be, because we are going to look at only the we are only interested in what is going to be our uh, phase response. I mean, we are only interested in uh, the loop dynamics, how fast it is going to settle, and so on. Okay. Now, if you want to derive the closed loop transfer function, I mean, you can take, you can rewrite this to be KPD, and then you have H of S, and then you have, let's say, some KVCO by S. All right. The 2 pi factor can be absorbed into that KVCO, right? And then you have a phi in, this is phi out. So this is your mathematical model of your PLL. Okay. Now what is your this can be taken as an open loop uh, transfer function, right? So, sorry, this is a unity gain feedback loop. This whole thing is your phase detector. So what is your total? Okay, let me just call this as L of S. Okay, what is your closed loop transfer function? H of S. Okay, this is given by phi out by phi in of S. Okay, now how do you write that? Phi out of S can be written as phi in of S minus phi out of S, right? This whole thing multiplied by KPD into L of S into KVCO by S, right? So if you rearrange terms, what will you get? You will get phi out of S is equal to 1 plus KPD L of S KVCO by S. Okay. This is equal, so phi out into this is equal to what? Phi in of S into KPD L of S KVCO of KVCO divided by S. Now L of S can be written as what? 1 by 1 plus SRC. Okay. Then what will you get if you can write phi out of S divided by phi in of S? This can be, or phi out by phi in of S can be written as KPD into 1 by 1 plus SRC into KVCO by S divided by 1 plus KPD 1 by 1 plus SRC into KVCO by S. Okay. Now, if you kind of do some simplification, what will you basically end up getting? You will basically say phi out by phi in of S can be written as KPD KVCO divided by RCS squared plus S plus KPD KVCO. Okay. Now this is the closed loop transfer function of your PLL. Okay. So we took a very simple negative feedback loop and we put all the elements together, and we saw what is we looked at it at a more intuitive level, right? And we saw how this will work, and then we went into the transfer function. This is the transfer function. Okay. Now how to get in? So obviously, as you see this, you can say that this is what is the order of your transfer function? Is a first order transfer function or second order transfer function? Yeah, this is a second order. Okay, so for a this is what is called as a type 1 PLL, and basically it is a second order transfer function, and all the second order dynamics that we have already talked about will be applicable. So we will go a little deeper into it in the next class, and we'll move over to what is called as type 2 PLL and C. Okay, any doubts, any questions? Okay, so thanks everyone, have a nice day. So as a just a reminder, please put your uh, uh, project group and the title that you have chosen in the group, in the WhatsApp group by end of today. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day. Yeah.
Sir,